Are you a pilot that feels a little preoccupied with the Mitsubishi and
Yes.
U2? Do you feel alone and misunderstood? Do you feel a silence
Oftentimes.
in your life as deafening as the Garrett TPE 331s? Do you feel the undeserved stigma of danger? Let Max and Dylan's overwing
Yes,
spoilers
I
of
just
love
had to defend this yesterday.
turn you towards true support. Every show is another affirmation of turboprop power under 12,500 pounds. These are the conversations you need to feel the appreciation you deserve. Welcome home.
Thank you. I feel a lot better now. Welcome aboard the 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast.
Rock on. You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots.
I looked back at them and I said, I don't think we're at the right airport. And they go, I don't think we are either.
Each episode, we bring you fascinating conversations with industry experts.
I think I should be a go-to on how to deal with 63, 64-year-old men.
You're going to chase it like a dog chasing a school bus.
But we're not just about the serious stuff. We're here to have fun.
And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise.
It's a whole thing.
The 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast is your destination for everything aviation, whether you're cruising in the flight levels or just starting your journey.
It is another episode of the 21.5 Show, the show for professional pilots by professional pilots. Hello. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Dylan, a professional pilot in business aviation. Joined by my illustrious co-host Max on the road, grinding at the 121.
Grinding out at 1:21 p.m. Got to the hotel last night about 3 a.m. after massive weather delays. Dude, these PMs are not for me.
Gotta get out of this.
I gotta get out of this.
It's so funny because it just
3.
seems...
I should be fair. It's 3 a.m. East Coast time, so it really was midnight Arizona time. It's not that bad. I'm being mildly dramatic, but
Why don't you explain, just for any new listeners or people that don't really understand how 121 schedules work, why there's essentially AMs and PMs. What does that even really mean?
Well, the airplane has got to fly this 6 a.m. flight and the 11 p.m. flight, and you can't do that with one crew because of duty limitations. So you have an AM crew, and they fly the kickoff flight in the morning and fly around till the afternoon at some point, and then the PM dudes, you hand the plane to them, and they fly it till the last flight of the night and get the airplane in position for then the AM crew the next morning. From how I understand, I mean, I don't work in the scheduling department, but that's how it appears to me.
No, it is. That was one thing that really was an eye-opener when I first started flying at the airlines. Typically, the first flight out and the last flight in are the most important flights, right? Those are the ones that are booked the heaviest.
Yeah.
And so airlines want that last flight in to be as late as possible and that first flight out to be as early as possible. So you got to have two different crews. So it seems like most airlines, domestic schedules, you typically work like a 6 a.m. to 2 to 3 p.m. or 2 to 3 p.m. till about midnight. Maybe not midnight, but between 10 and midnight. So
yeah, somewhere there. Unless things fall off the rails.
Yeah,
which that's the problem. So when you're on a PM, typically, a lot of times you're not even starting out. You're starting out late because whatever, there was delays or edict times or whatever. So you already start off on the wrong foot, as they say.
That's what I was going to say.
You watch your phone, it just keeps getting later and later. And then I flew yesterday, and then there was a ground stop to Orlando. And so I was on the ground for like 3.5 hours. It sucked.
Chain reaction. That's why I always...
But it doesn't matter. I finished a book and used my time wisely.
Yeah. And the worst is when you leave the hotel, if you're on the PM crew, you leave the hotel and don't realize your inbound flight is late. And then you get to the airport and it's like, it's 2 hours. And you're like, I could have just stayed at the hotel.
Well, so this trip started off. So I get to the airport and my flight was already late, right? Like we were just talking about. And And I could see it, but I'm like, you can sometimes call scheduling, and if your plane's, inbound plane's airborne, and they know they're not going to swap it around. But it was only like an hour late, and I was already going to the gym before and had a whole plan. So I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll just go. I'll go to the Sapphire Lounge, get a cappuccino, and chill for a minute. And so I'm walking to the Sapphire
Lounge is an airline club, not a gentleman's club, by the way.
That's true. That's exactly. It does sound like a gentleman's club, like near Houston Hobby or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, you want to go to the Sapphire Lounge tonight?
You thirsty?
Doesn't close till 4. No, yeah, it's like a similar to the Centurion Club. You get the idea. So I'm walking there, and
which
my phone
also sounds like a
gets an
gentleman's
alert on my
club.
watch, and I look at it, and so I get an alert, and I got reassigned for a flight that's like departing in like 10 minutes. I'm like on the other side of the airport. I'm like, oh, all right. So I acknowledge that, which is good because then it moves up. So it starts earlier than my originally scheduled flight. So now I get paid time and a half, right? So I'm like, so that's the thing about these work rules. You get jerked around, but you're kind of happy about it. You're like, oh, whatever. I'll fly one leg to New Orleans instead. And it was funny because I was just watching all this weather. I was supposed to go to Houston, and there's all this weather in Houston midday. And it was like moving through. I'm like, oh, perfect. That'll move off by the time I get to Houston, and it won't be a problem. Easy peasy, right? So then I get reassigned to New Orleans. Well, where do you think all that weather that was over Houston is parked right now? Right over top of New Orleans.
Spoiler alert.
So I fly there in this nasty rainstorm or whatever, and we land, and that was it. And then the next day too, what the schedule they worked out started me earlier again by like a little bit. And so I get paid time and a half the next day. So you're like, oh, all right. And then the next day was yesterday where I'm sitting there, and then I was spent, 3.5 hours on the ground. So we get a ground time override now. So now you're getting paid for just sitting on the ground, which normally would just be a total waste of time, which worked out pretty good. And so, these new work rules really take the sting out of this whole thing.
So parlaying that with our earlier conversation, it seems like you get more soft pay flying PMs, just because kind of things are unraveling more later in the day.
You do, because the things fall off the rails more. Yeah, you can't get moved up on an AM like you're already on the kickoff flight. So, yeah, I think you typically do get a little more soft pay on the PMs, which is great unless it's the last day. So today's my last day, but it's great going west. Everything looks good. So knock on wood. Yeah. Be home on time at 10 p.m., which I suppose doesn't really make a difference either way if you're late. But
yeah, right. What's the difference between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m.?
So for the yoga class my wife has me signed up for tomorrow morning at like 8:30 a.m. So you could really. So yesterday I'm in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
And we're downtown, and I like to it's kind of nice to go walk in the morning and to the, Cafe Du Monde and get a chicory coffee and some beignets, kind of a when in Rome thing. So it was pouring rain all night, and I get up and I see the sun. I'm like, oh, it's not too bad out. I look around. I'm like, I guess maybe I'll be able to get out, because we were going to go out last night to Drago's and get some oysters, and do the whole thing. And it was just pouring. So we went to the hotel, or stayed in the hotel. So I get on in my shoes and I walk down to, it's like a 15-minute walk or whatever, and sit down and get my beignets and my coffee and doing the New Orleans thing. And then it just freaking starts pouring, dude. And I'm like, oh boy. I'm just getting drenched. And so I kind of waited out, and it let up, and I hightailed it back, and my shirt is still wet from yesterday in my bag. But
good news is when it rains in New Orleans, it smells really good too in downtown.
Yeah, right. Well, that city usually needs a good rinsing, from what I can remember. So,
and it's an interesting one. So I got a good one for you. I was a couple of weeks ago, did a trip into Teterboro, or attempted to at least, and ended up finally getting to Teterboro. Had to stop somewhere in between to avoid a major edict time. And right now, I mean, the Northeast is just a disaster. And if you don't know, if you haven't, any professional pilot probably knows what's going on there. There's just that sector with Newark and Teterboro, they're just short-staffed, and people are going to retire soon. And it doesn't really sound like there's going to be a quick fix Like this could be, I talked to one controller on ProPilot World that used to control there, who actually came on our show, one of our first guests to try and, I'm trying to get him back on the show. He is retired, but he's still got some insight. He was saying like, there's like I think he said 2 guys slated to retire from that sector later this year too. Like it's only going to get worse. And it's not like you can just drop. It's not like you just call a reserve in,
disaster,
you know?
Dude.
Yeah. So anyways, so we ended up having to go to a different airport in a different sector, and then finally ended up making it to Teterboro. Okay. And then went out for an incredible Italian dinner nearby, just near Newark. We're supposed to fly out of Newark the next morning. And this goes back to your point about the AM flight and the wheels falling off. So I could have booked the 6 a.m. flight home, gotten up at, 2 a.m. Phoenix time and gotten on the first flight. But like, you know what? We'll take the 10 a.m. We could sleep a little bit, then we'll go home. Okay? Big mistake.
Gentleman's flight.
Yeah, gentleman's flight. Like, with the time change, I'll still be back by lunch, in Phoenix. So, of course, we get there, and it's just like one of those, you're like, I know this thing's going to get delayed. And I feel like every airline flight that I'm on, they don't tell you it's delayed until after, like, the reasonable time you would need to leave for the airport. So you're already, like, en route, So it's like, whatever, Yeah, exactly. So it's like, an hour and a half before departure or whatever. And bing, it's delayed. All right. Okay. Well, no problem. We'll have breakfast in the terminal. So then, finally, it's time to depart. My colleague and I both get upgraded to first class. And I'm like, this is too good to be true. I mean, this is one of the longer domestic flights there is, right? New York to Phoenix. So we're just like, this has worked out perfect. 2-hour delay, who cares? So we're like boarding the plane, so happy, sit down in the seat. And then they're like, oh, it's ground stop. There's lightning. We can't load the bags. All right, no problem. We're sitting in our first class seat. Then about 30 minutes later, the guy's like, well, we're really watching the clock here because the crew could time out. So we got to be out. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So, because I didn't think about that, but yeah, they had just done a short flight, but then that long leg to Phoenix, like, there's not a lot of margin for error on that. So of course they time out. We have to taxi back to the gate. So at this point now there's a 4 p.m. flight, and our flight has been delayed till 7 p.m. because it is a base. It's a base in American. So they have to call out reserves to cover this. So I'm like, okay. So then I'm stuck with this.
No, they don't. You just reassign people till you get the 2-hour call out.
Well, Newark isn't really a hub, so there's not a lot of people to grab. So you got to like have somebody drive over.
Oh,
so now I'm
like
stuck in this conundrum where I'm like, all right, I know this is a base for American. It's in New York City, so they got to have guys drive. So it's like, do I move? There were a couple seats left on the 4 p.m., like middle seats at 4, or do I wait till 7 and keep my first class seat? So we're sitting there and we're like, the day is almost shot. What would you do in that scenario? Knowing that it basically doesn't matter because you're going to get home. Your day is pretty much kind of shot at that point.
I would take the earlier flight, and if you're a single person, you're still going to be able to get an aisle or a window seat, like even if it's the last minute, like.
Well, because they're rolling everybody from our delayed flight over into this.
I know,
flight.
but then everything's in motion. I think there's opportunity there when you're a party of one, but that's probably what I would have done because I've been in this position that you're in, and you have to be focused on the goal, which is getting home as quickly as possible, and the rest of it has to take a back seat.
Yep, and I was focused on the wrong goal. I was focused on, it'd be so comfortable to just be, a couple hours later. I'd rather do that, and sit in the first class seat than get home quickly. Nope. So literally, the 4 o'clock flight goes. We were like, yeah, we'll pass on that one. We'll keep our seats. They close the boarding door. That airplane starts pushing back. We get the alert on the phone. 7 p.m. flight canceled.
Was there a Sapphire Club in New York? All you young budding aviators out there, learn from Dylan's mistakes. So, we talk about people that like have varying levels of passion for aviation, right? All right. So I have my wife's aunt who is a Catholic nun, like real deal nun, wears the habit, the whole thing. And she takes us like one trip a year. So she's in town. So we have everybody over for dinner at our house. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to, her name is Sister Mary. And I'm talking to Sister Mary. And, when you're trying to have an extended conversation with a nun, there's a limited bandwidth a lot of times, and what life experience is kind of limited on what they're up to and stuff. So anyway, I pivot the conversation.
I mean, so you're saying that she doesn't really know much about leaded fuels. That's the problem.
Yeah, we don't have a ton in common, but very nice lady, and I enjoyed hanging out with her. But so we're just talking, and I pivot the conversation. I'm like, hey, she's in her 70s, so she's been around, right? And I pivot the conversation to show her we're staying right there, and I show her my defunct airline glass collection I'm building that I talked about on the show. For those of you who don't know, I'm collecting these glasses. I'm buying them from airlines that no longer exist and trying to, like Pan Am and U.S. Airways and Piedmont and whatever, National Airlines and stuff. And so she goes, oh, Eastern Airlines. I remember flying on them. I have a story about that. So I was flying on Eastern Airlines, and they did such a great job with something. I don't remember what it was. She goes, and I wrote the CEO a letter, and he responded and said, thank you so much for your kind note. We don't typically at the airlines get letters that are of praise. We normally get people complaining. So it was so refreshing, and I really appreciate it. And that was that. And I go, it was from the CEO. And she goes, yeah. I go, do you remember what his name was? She goes, oh, I can't remember. He was such a nice man, though. His letter was so sweet, blah, 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 blah. I said, it wasn't Frank Borman, was it? And she goes, it was Frank Borman. He was such a nice guy. I couldn't believe. And I like, for those of you that have read Hard Landings with us, definitely know who Frank Borman was. And she goes, he was such a nice guy, and keeps going on. And I'm like, well, a lot of people didn't think of Frank Borman as such a nice guy, but I'm glad you had such a positive experience with him. It was so funny.
Not a real a friend to the nuns, not a friend to the pilots.
Yeah, no, that's all I got.
Okay, that's good. We're struggling with internet connection here, so we're going to move on before things get really spicy here. Maxwell, lots of great reviews. Lots of comments. My favorite, we used to just read reviews on Apple Podcasts, but now that our Kalisa has grown our YouTube channel, we're starting to get a lot of YouTube comments. Rate, review, subscribe. We'll drop a comment down below, and people are dropping a comment down below. So I'll have some of those to read to you as well. Okay. Max, this first review is just spectacular. A Paddling Duck wrote a masterpiece for us. It's an MU2 support group, he says. Are you a pilot that feels a little preoccupied with the Mitsubishi MU2? Yes. Do you feel alone and misunderstood? Do you feel a silence in your life as deafening as the Garrett TPE 331s? Do you feel the undeserved stigma of danger? Let Max and Dylan's overwing spoilers of love
had to defend this yesterday.
Turn you towards true support. Every show is another affirmation of turboprop power under 12,500 pounds. These are the conversations you need to feel the appreciation you deserve. Welcome home.
Thank you. I feel a lot better now.
Magnificent. Yeah.
So misunderstood. What we do?
I feel no shame. Do you? Are you getting shamed?
No. But when have I ever felt shame, though?
Yeah. No. That's what I thought.
Proudly.
Good. Great T-shirt. A Paddling Duck, send us your email or your mailing address, please, so we can send you every sticker we've ever made.
Yes, you deserve it. All right, next one. I like the new intro. Finally. Also, I love the diversions and white plane stories. I also think you should do a rest of the story, Paul Harvey style, but for airplanes. Maybe start with AOPA trivia questions. Ha! That's from Helio Slow 9244.
We did a rest of the story with the Keybird, with Vern. That was the ultimate rest of the story.
Yeah, right? No kidding. featuring the caribou. That was the
we're
real
about
rest
to
of
do
the
another
story.
one.
Your dad is
Yeah.
so skeptical over.
Exactly.
Did we ever get resolution on that?
It's still working on plotting the time distance.
Still
I've
has
been trying to load
E6B
the
out,
caribou
working out the math.
profile into. Yeah, we're trying to. I'm trying to get the historical wins from that day so we can really try and plot.
He's waiting
an
for
accurate
the
leg
Freedom
time.
of Information Act request from NOAA for the winds aloft forecast.
The Thule Air Base.
It's recently declassified. The
historical
Thule
record.
historical weather. Got it. That's
Yeah.
right. We'll get there. Keep it up, Tom. Keep it.
Speaking of Thule, dude, and speaking of your YouTube videos, I watched a really good one about yesterday about the strategic importance of Anchorage and how Anchorage used to be this huge passenger stop for the airlines back during the Cold War because no one could fly over Russia. And now there's less passenger traffic going through Anchorage, but there's more, so much cargo traffic going there because it's really like positioned as one of the most strategic cities in the world just because it's like almost 9 hours from like almost any major city, in the Northern Hemisphere. And they were just talking about how the Arctic is now going to be the most important, part of the new like energy rush, and that's why Thule's so important now, and why Trump is trying to get in control of Greenland. And remember that whole Space Force base when we talked to Casey from the Space Force?
Yeah,
they were talking about how they had that base there. We're like, oh, you're going to get sentenced to the Greenland base. Anyways, major tangent, but. All right, last email or YouTube comment. 13591K guy here. I'm new to the whole podcast thing, but a buddy of mine told me to give you guys a listen. I am hooked. I'm usually listen to an audiobook on my commute to my tail, but have recently gone back and downloaded about a dozen of your past shows to listen to. Great content, and I would love to have a sticker if you have them for purchase. No problem. We don't even have to buy one. Just shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com, and we will send you a
Toto
sticker.
gratis. Just
Toto
for you.
gratis. You got to include your mailing address.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the reviews. Appreciate it when folks leave their comments. We love to send out some stickers. Just got a new batch of them, so happily we'll send some your way. Max, lots in the mailbag today, which is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Advanced Aircrew Academy. Aircrewacademy.com is the website to check out all of their offerings. I was just looking at one of the modules they have on there, the EFB iPad module, one that we take for granted as Part 91 operators, but there are some requirements for if you're a Part 135. You can learn all about the op specs and rules pertaining to that by checking out their module. They also do have something for Part 91 as well. I don't know if you've seen the latest EFB development that just got announced, the new charts that Garmin, I think it's called Smart Charts.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of this yet?
I've seen the announcement, but I
Very
haven't
interesting.
really looked at it or anything. What's the deal?
It makes sense because Garmin's been in this situation. Well, we don't know actually what's going on, but Jeppesen, right, which was owned by Boeing and now is not, and then ForeFlight and all that got sold off. So you've got this interesting thing where you had the traditional charts everyone was using, but Garmin was kind of stuck because their biggest competitor had that data, and so I think they've tried to basically create their own thing. So I'm excited to try it. So if you're a listener and you've been checking out the smart charts, I want to hear an update from you on that because it looks pretty cool from the preliminary videos that I have seen. So anyways, that's it from Advanced Aircrew Academy. Check it out, aircrewacademy.com, and you can learn more about EFBs there. On to the mailbag. Go ahead, Max, with the first one.
Right. Hey, had to laugh again that you actually put my clip on the show. To answer your and Max's question, I get home every day to get into my bed. And this is Brett, and we talked to him about
the trucker. Yeah.
Oh, the trucker. Okay, that's right.
The semi-truck driving.
Start work at 5 in the afternoon, work 12 to 14 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. Managed to squeeze my private pilot's license in last year with this schedule. Thought about continuing to move forward, but honestly, I don't think I can that much and get the studying in required for the instrument. Perhaps in retirement, 30 years in at this company. Eligible to retire now, but trying to will my way to 59 and a half. It's actually been a great job that's provided for my family well. It's all about how you frame it. Solid 6 figures and benefits to listen to all podcasts all night, not to mention a lot of stories to tell. Again, thanks to you guys for all that you do. And that was from Brett. That's a
Love it.
aggressive schedule.
Brett,
good for you.
That is a grind. That's it. We were talking about working AMs and PMs. That sounds like you get to do both.
Yeah, I commend you. He's got to have a lot of knowledge, though. Having that much time to listen to books and podcasts and stuff, he's got to know a lot about a lot.
Yeah. Brett, check out the 100 low-lead series on YouTube. It's a 3-parter, and you'll have a little bit more knowledge.
I think it's actually a 4-parter.
Great.
The last one is on,
it's 4-part
replacement. So I actually haven't got there yet.
It really ties everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Next email says, "Gents, I recently had a buddy ask me about paying for his own type rating. And this email had a bunch of typos in it that I couldn't read, so this is what I could pull out of it, but they want to know about a type rating, paying for a type rating. He goes on to say, I could have swore you guys chatted with James on this topic. Can you send me a link for the episode? Thanks so much. Stay well. Regards, Greg. Have we talked to James about this?
I do not recall this. That doesn't mean that we didn't. I just don't remember.
I don't recall that. Quickly, I'll give you my take on paying for a type rating. It's just business dependent. I think at this point, you're essentially, if you're buying a type rating, you have to think of your pilot career as a business that you're investing in. And, there's a lot of different ways that it can happen, but I would not do it unless I had something already lined up. There are certainly times when it is appropriate to pay for your own type rating, especially if you're a professional contract pilot and this is what you do, or, there are certain scenarios, but the scenario that gets people in trouble is no one's calling me for work, I can't find a job, or I don't have enough time to get hired the traditional route. So let me just buy a type rating and see if I can sort of like cut the line and start getting work. And that's probably
I usually only recommend buying a type rating for a recently retired airline pilot that's looking to get into corporate.
It's a great way to make a lot of friends.
Well, that way, and then just undercut everybody else at the airport. So that's a sure way to get work.
Yeah, exactly.
And get murdered in the parking lot.
Yeah,
but,
just do it for beer money.
Just do it for beer money. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. But there are scenarios where it is appropriate, but those are few and far between. And I think you've got to have something like already lined up. But if you think you're just going to go buy a type rating and then people are going to start calling you and to go flying with zero time in type and no connections, it's not going to happen, and you're going to learn a painful lesson.
All right, move on. We've beat that horse enough times.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi guys. A couple years ago, one of my owners, I managed to fly a couple of PC-12s, gifted me Outlive during the holidays. That's the book I recommended in our healthspan, lifespan rant. It's a great book, and I was happy to see Max pushing healthspan for pilots. I do in-aircraft recurrent training for folks in the PC-12, and I try to remember to mention using sunscreen on a regular basis, as I use it myself. Maybe I'll need to add compression socks to my advice. I'm 68, so healthspan is getting more and more important, and I liked how Peter positions it in his book that we are training today to be able to do the everyday tasks we want to do when we're 100. Great podcast. Thanks. And that's from Jim. Good. I'm glad that was well received by some people.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback on that. So good idea on that segment. Hey guys, keeping tabs on the corporate job market and what is available. It seems like some companies are requiring a training contract to be signed for a year if you are already typed, or 2 years if you require an initial type rating for the airplane to be flown. Thoughts on this? Should they be doing this, or will it turn away pilots? And that's also from Greg. Maybe a different Greg.
It's a balancing act. Obviously, you're going to turn away pilots, period. There's some people that are going to turn around and walk away. But it's a trade-off, right, for the financial security. So like any business, I'm sure they've evaluated that, and they think this is the most advantageous route to go.
Well, it's like we've talked about with James before. Like, we need the website with the pilot leverage index. We talked about the fear and greed index for investors, where you fear/greed. It's the same now with the pilots don't have the leverage because there's not that many jobs because the major airlines aren't hiring. So you're going to see employers want more and more protections because there's more and more applicants for those jobs. And so they say, well, if we've got 500 people applying for this job, let's protect ourselves as much as possible, and we'll be able to find someone. And so this is always a moving target. My advice on this is never sign a contract that you're not willing to fulfill. And unfortunately, like we say in this show, flexibility is the key to air power, and training contracts reduce that flexibility. So the problem is why training contracts exist in the most part is because people go and they train, and then they get the type rating, and then they leave. Now I'm painting with a very broad brush, and there's often very good reasons the way they leave, and I'm not saying that that's a bad decision. I'm just saying people can get burned sometimes, and so you see the
and I think what it is typically it's the 10% that ruin it for everybody, right? Most people, I think, especially in business aviation, because your reputation very much precedes you, especially in the local market. That anybody that I've ever hired, I say, hey, we just have to have a gentleman's agreement that you're going to give me at least a year or whatever, right? And
if you're paying for an
and if it's somebody that's
like
brand new to business aviation, I'll try and explain to them, listen, if you do leave early, people will not forget that, and that will hinder you for years to come. So let's just save the formalities, but here's the expectation. And I think that's what, if it wasn't for people bailing early and taking advantage, then we wouldn't have training contracts. But unfortunately, it's the reality of the world we live in.
Yeah, and the problem is that what's going to happen in the next 2 years, we don't know. It's entirely possible that the major airlines, I just saw that American's going to start hiring again in
Will the 730, will the MAX 7 be certified in the next 2 years? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah,
there are no certainties in this business.
Yeah. So if I was a pilot right now and I was looking at jobs and I was going to sign a 2-year contract at a place that I didn't really see myself being long term, I was like, oh, I could go fly a Hawker right now. Well, maybe there's a King Air job where you don't have to sign a 2-year contract, and that's a better spot for you to be, even though in the short term you compare the two jobs and you're like, well, one's better than the other. But if you don't want to avoid getting locked in, that's certainly a consideration too. So good email. Let's see who reads the next one. You read the next one. Go ahead.
Guys, I'm a 91 135 KFO. This is a third career for me. I spent 20 years as a criminal investigator with the Department of Homeland Security while simultaneously serving in the Army Reserve for 23 years. I recently applied to NetJets and was rejected within 2 hours of hitting send. I have to admit I took it pretty hard, and while on my 15-day rotations, I couldn't help but notice some of the NetJets pilots, and I was asking myself what made them better than me. Fast forward 2 months after finding out about your podcast and going back and listening to several of your older shows, I've really gotten a lot of value out of your shows talking about just how to highlight past life accomplishments and experience other than just flying. I will probably be giving James a jingle at Raven. In short, your shows have helped me talk me off the ledge and feeling like a failure for being rejected. I have a new purpose with each passing flying day and will use this rejection as a way to grow. I'm now a dedicated listener to your podcast. Very respectfully, from Brian R. That's weird because he's a 91K 135 FO. I wonder why they would reject him within 2 hours. That's usually like you just simply don't meet the minimum requirements, right? You don't take that personally. That's like some filter that they've got set. Yeah, that's automated thing. But
especially NetJets, like NetJets right now is one of the only places hiring. There is a massive stack of resumes right now. Again, pilot leverage index is not in the favor of the pilot. So I wouldn't take any rejections personally. NetJets has the luxury of being like, this is exactly the applicant we want, and if you don't fit in that tiny little box, you're not gonna make it through the initial screening. Okay, that's gonna do it for the mailbag. Thanks to Advanced Aircrew Academy for their longtime partnership in bringing all of the listener email to us, comments, questions. We love them all. info@215podcast.com is the email address. We look forward to reading your email on a future episode. A good one in flight advice today, Max. I think it's going to be really good. And, flight advice is brought to you by our friends at Harvey Watt. And we were just talking about one of our college buddies is currently out, not flying. And fortunately, he's at an airline, and they've got the Harvey Watt coverage, and he's going to be out for months. And when you talk to folks
Put it this way,
are out,
he's not very motivated to come back. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well. Plug your ears, Harvey Watt. Who didn't hear that?
They're not idiots.
It's just crazy to think. And this person is, in their 40s. You just never know when there could be a scenario where you're going to lose your medical. You're unable to fly. You got to be protected. You have to make sure that the income, that your family is still going to be able to put food on the table and eat, because 66% of pilots could go out on a long-term, or probably will go out on a long-term medical event in their career. So make sure that you are covered. HarveyWatt.com has all the information. Even if you already have coverage through your airline, there may be some gaps in it depending on what they've negotiated. So talk to Harvey Watt, see what your airline offers, and if you're business aviation, they have coverage for you as well. HarveyWatt.com. On to flight advice, Max. This is a good one. I like this one. So a while back, I'm going to summarize part of this email. We had somebody had written in, and they had said, "Hey, I've got my A&P. Is this going to be a good thing or a bad thing for me as I transition to becoming a professional pilot?" And we had thoughts about where it could be good and where it could be bad. And so he replies, to answer some of your questions you guys had regarding having your A&P and being a professional pilot, he says, I wouldn't mind being utilized in some of the AOG situations that you had described. I think, Max, you guys had a scenario where you were AOG, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I've had a couple times with two people that had A&Ps.
And have been able to rescue it. I'm actually leaning more toward that idea of managing maintenance and flying. Also, I've managed people as a supervisor and as an aviation maintenance instructor for an FAA Part 147 school. So thanks for all your insight there. So that's great. Yeah, I think those are all positives there in your background. He goes on to say, since then, life has taken an unexpected and pretty awesome turn. I am still working toward getting the CFI done, but I've also somehow Forrest-Gumped my way into a part-time SIC role, flying a Citation XLS, a Bravo, and potentially a PC-12 for a 91-135 company local to me. The company I'm working with wants to move forward with 6155 training for each airframe so I can get SIC typed in all three. The main two captains that I have been flying with are CFI, II, MEI, so I have been able to log all of the time that I am getting. It is in no way lost on me that I have basically won the lottery. That brings me to my new question. What advice would you give to a woefully inexperienced first officer who suddenly finds himself in this position with just over 500 hours total time, besides the obvious things like knowing V-speeds, callouts, how to program the FMS, and getting ICE from the FBO? I am curious about what guidance you might offer those of us that find ourselves in this kind of predicament. Also, I am curious about moving forward with the CFI. I've had to pause it for now as I will be out of town for a series of work trips. My intent is to pick it up once the travel is done. Hopefully, I can get it done before my written expires. My thoughts are to get the CFI done, but not at the expense of this new opportunity. Curious to know your thoughts there, too. You may be asking, how do you have time to make all of this work? He says his A&P is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off with no travel. I really appreciate everything you guys put into the show. It's a great resource and steady motivator. Still faking it till I make it, Chris.
I have some thoughts. So it's great, dude. You got a good break, and that's awesome. On those, as far as a lot of people, well, this is really the only reason most people do a 6155 and get an SIC types because they don't want to pay for the type rating or whatever. But which is okay. It is what it is. And if your insurance will buy that, that's great. But what I would encourage you to do is, instead of looking at it as like meeting the bare requirements, is take that training seriously, and spend the time and dig into the books and really learn the systems like you would if you were sitting through the PowerPoint presentation at Flight Safety, and really try and understand and learn the airplane for real, versus just doing what's required to check the box and have, because essentially someone's just signing you off and you go to the FSDO and be like, oh, I got the signature in my logbook. Can I get my SIC type? So try and take it very seriously. Look at the requirements in the regulation and try and these guys are CFIs and everything, and they can teach you try on an empty leg, do a single engine approach and landing and try and get creative and actually simulate
simulated
real
single engine
deal
approach.
Training. Yeah, I should have said that. Thank you. And do.
I'm going to go ahead and shut this one down here.
So anyway, just take the training serious. You got a great opportunity, but do try and really learn and be a real SIC, not just a puppet.
Yeah.
And then as far as your CFI,
Well said.
yeah, I mean, chip away at it. Getting your CFI is awesome. It's good experience. Hopefully you can utilize it. And like I said, there's times you never in the future that you don't know about where you will want to utilize that CFI. So do try and get it done when you can fit it in. That would be my advice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Grind away on that CFI for sure. Yeah. And just to, some of the things you're going to learn, those first few hundred hours in the jet, you're going to be behind because you're not, this is new. Working in a 2-crew environment is new. How good of CRM, it sounds like you're going to be paired with some good people, hopefully. So learning a lot of the CRM stuff will be super important. So I think it's a great opportunity to leverage all of that. And what his question of how do I be a good SIC at 500 hours got me thinking about what are the good qualities of a low time pilot where
when you don't have the benefit of a lot of experience, you have to make up for it in other ways. And I think, a wise investment would be getting a flight simulator set up and flying, you don't want to be the stuff you can prepare for. You want to have call outs, things like that stuff you want to get on the ground where you don't have to think about it because you already have to think enough about staying up with the jet and at the new speed you're going at and FMCs and all that stuff. So the stuff that you can master on the ground, get that down so you don't have to devote any brain power to that while you're flying. And that's what you do when you're low time. I can get away at this point in my career, slacking a little bit on the ground prep for a new type rating just because I've done it enough. But I remember the first jet I flew, dude, we were chair flying with the poster on the wall and set missed approach altitude, de-approach climb, blah, 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 doing all this crap. I still remember those call outs, dude, from American Eagle 20 years ago because those were the law of primacy, right? And so that's the thing. And literally it sounds geeky and, even James said, but get in there, find an XLS sim you can fly on. And if you can get the real geeky ones that have the FMC and stuff like that, program a hold, fly a mist, blah, blah, blah. Just try and over prepare to compensate for your lack of experience.
Absolutely. And, I've flown recently with some folks that are newer to the jet world. And I'll tell you what, it's impressive with those resources. I feel like there are tools out there that can really help people be a lot more prepared than I felt like we were because what you're saying with simulators and being able to watch. But I would say the other thing too is depending on how open the captain is to questions, and it may not be during the flight, it may be after the flight, keep a pad and pen nearby and write down things that you see the captain do that maybe you don't understand, or why did we do this, or why did you make this decision? And in the moment, it may not be appropriate to ask, especially if it's in the terminal environment and there's a lot going on. But try and write some of these things down, and then you may get some really interesting explanations about, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I know that this is going to happen, or I'm setting up for this vector because I'm anticipating that the controller is going to say this or whatever. So you might be more appropriate at the hotel debrief later on.
Yeah,
but,
and because you do have another job, you're not just a straight young 500 SIC kid. When you take the captain out to ask him all these questions, make sure you buy the beer.
Yeah. Power move.
It really gets it makes the captain a lot more receptive to answering all your questions.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Really? You're gonna buy? Perfect.
Great.
Let's go.
Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, congrats. congrats on that situation. That is a great place to learn. Those are all great airplanes to fly. So excited for you, Chris. Keep us posted on your journey. Max, my internet is dying. I think we've got to wrap this episode up here. We're lucky we've made it this far.
Honestly.
Yeah, the Khaleesi's got her work cut out for her. Good luck. Yeah. Is going to do it for another episode of the 21.5 show. We'd love to hear from our listeners. We said in the mailbag, flight advice, of course. You can visit our website, fill out the anonymous form, and give us as much information as you got, and we'll try and help you out as much as we can. Thanks to all of the sponsors. Oh, you're laughing, Max. You've got something.
I'm just thinking of the irony right now is that you're sitting inside of a house. Yet I've been following this Sailing with Phoenix guy who's solo sailing a sailboat from Oregon to Hawaii, and his internet is 100 times better in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
1,000.
It's just like the irony is uncanny that with the technology we have and stuff now for $50 a month for my Starlink plan, that I could have better internet than you literally almost anywhere on the planet right now.
Isn't that insane?
With a battery and my the Starlink that I pull out of my backpack.
Well, I think you and I were talking about this. Don't you feel like somebody's going to try and it's just going to encourage more and more people to do extreme live streaming?
I've already thought about live streaming from the Meta glasses landing in the backcountry of Idaho. Like you can, that's a thing. You can do that now. That's insane.
I know, dude. I'm think that something's bad is going to happen. That's what I'm worried about. Somebody's going to try and strap a Starlink on and hike Mount Everest solo.
Listen, let's be honest.
Really weird.
I didn't follow this dude, the Sailing with Phoenix guy, because I really wanted to hear what he.
You thought it was going to be safe.
I didn't want to hear what he had to say about with all his selfie videos. Frankly, I was waiting for a big storm to come in to see what Homeboy was going to do with him and his cat.
Right.
But going down. Listen, he made it, which was. And I think that too. I mean, he gained a lot of followers. There's all these people there for this reception, and that. Yeah, I think that. I think this is lighting a match that is going to start a fire.
It's going to end badly.
Get a little out of control. But hey, listen, I'm here to watch. So I'll be honest.
Do it for the gram.
It interests me. So
do it for the gram.
Anyway,
all right. Thanks to all our sponsors, Advanced Aircrew Academy, Harvey Watt, Timothy P. Pope, Veris Jet Sales, the Aircomp Calculator, Pro Pilot World, James O'Neill, all of our friends, the Amigo Aerotow crew. Appreciate all of their support. We'll be back next week with another episode. Hopefully we'll be connected a little bit better. Maybe we'll even do it in person, Matt.
Who knows? Things could get crazy. I do have a month off after this trip, so I'll be around.
Love it. All right. Until then,
remember. All right. Flexibility is the key to air power. See you next time.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.